Welcome back, artists. I'm Wyatt Paints, and this week I'm taking another nostalgic trip back to the 90s and painting America's #1 yellow dad, Homer Simpson. While very simplified, we're going to have to handle two colors that are notorious for giving painters a hard time: white and yellow. Plus, because this is a classic animated character, we're going to need that finish to be smooth as silk. So our surface needs to be impeccable. Thankfully, we could treat this like any other project and take it step by step until we're done and we have a completed project that we'll be proud to put on our shelf. But, unlike usual, this one's going to need a little bit of extra love before we get to the priming. So, meet me over at the sanding table. I'm going to put on my respirator. Let's get started. Out of the gate, even with a well-calibrated resin printer, prints can have various issues. Usually these minor defects go unnoticed as there's so much detail on a model that a slight bit of warping here or there or a random support mark will be invisible. But when I'm tasked to do something as smooth as Homer, I know a lot of sanding is going to be needed to get this show ready. And you don't have to do this in a dozen steps. I find I can get by with just two. Starting with 120 grit, I sand down all of my problem areas. I don't use a lot of pressure here. Resin is incredibly soft, and this rough grit will chew through it fast. So keep a light touch and you can control how far you need to go. You want to check your sanded surface often. You're looking for the sanded particles to catch in unnatural places. So if you see a line or polka dots that shouldn't be there, you know you have some more sanding to do. Once they disappear, you'll need to stop and move on to a new spot. Some deformations can be corrected here and not require a reprint, like this end of the hot dog. Careful correcting sanding can round off the error and save time, resin, and money. Areas like the underside of the cape and the bottom of the shoes don't really need much attention, since they'll be well hidden, and sanding here is strictly for the fitting purposes. His pants were Support Mark City, but it's the same as anywhere else, just with a tighter fit. Sand until the dots disappear. The real part to highlight was the repair that was needed. After many failed attempts at printing this grill, this was my best result. Rather than reprinting again, this was good enough to make work, and y'all might be interested in seeing how. First, I prepped the lead by smoothing down a few warping lines and got it looking straight. Then, it just made sense to fill in the 4 smaller holes I made for cleaning. That center one can stay as an ash dump. To fill the holes, I turned to a bit of resin that I keep in a blacked out dropper bottle. Alternating this with a UV light, I was quickly able to fill in the holes completely, and then added a bit of overfill to top them off. And I treated the holes on the handles exactly the same. With everything sealed and cured, I sanded everything smooth. There. Now you can't even see that the holes are even there. And all the support marks are gone as well. Now to attach the leg and make sure it's aligned correctly. I'm going to use the base as a glue rig and hold the grill and leg in the correct position while my crazy glue dried. After a few minutes, I had a nasty gap that needed resin love. And just like the other holes, alternating with a UV light got the leg patched up and looking good. Reattached leg is slightly rounded base, but other than that, it's pretty perfect. But I did say that this was going to be a 2-step process. Now I need to go back over everything I sanded with 600 grit to smooth out the deeper scars left from the 120 grit. Thankfully, this will take less time if you add a touch of water to the mix. Not only will it keep the dust down, it'll also keep it from clogging the grit on your paper, letting you do more faster. I just had to be extra careful around the leg. Also, as you can see, this creates a ton of resin dust. Do not want to breathe this in. I'm using a respirator for safety. You should too. Once everything is smooth to the eye, it's time to give everything a prime to check our work, as a quick prime coat will make any trouble areas very apparent, like these slight layer lines, and this deep scratch that just was invisible before. So it's back to the high grit to knock them down, followed by the 600 grit to smooth it out. Models with more detailed texture will tend to hide these sort of small print areas better. Comparatively, more smooth models like Homer here makes them shine like the sun, so it's going to take a little bit of extra time. But with everything sanded and reprimed, it is time to get to the fun part. Working from the ground up, the base is a pretty simple circle of paver stones and some grass in the middle. So let's get started with deep gray. I just needed a quick, even base of gray. So there really isn't a need to paint clean, but that solid even coverage is a must, which is going to be a common theme for this project. Solid, opaque base coats are going to be the foundation of that cartoon style. Now, a bit of angel green. I still can't get over how this is called angel green. I know it's based off of Warhammer of the Blood Angel faction and they wear this color, which honestly makes kind of less sense to me. Regardless, here I'm focusing most of this on the inner circle and trying to leave a nice ring of black. This will give me a nice subtle spotlight effect and lets me risk avoid overpainting and getting green on the stones. And because this is a bit more textured, a stippling came in handy to really drive the color into the deeper spots. To get some shade, dark tone. Now, because this is a cartoon, I really don't want to use this as an all-over wash, as it can give you a muddier all-over look. With all the bright primary colors, I really need to keep them as clean as I can to capture that animated TV aesthetic. While some shading is going to be necessary, for the most part, I want them to be very sharp and deliberate with zero transition. So I kept this strictly in the cracks and lines that I want to black out. And since I want these nice and dark, they needed several reapplications to get full intensity. Resist the urge to darken this in just one go. Now, just to clean up a bit of overspill of the shade and really crisp up those hard transitions, I went back with a light dry brush of deep gray. Just a few light swipes to tighten up the look and really push the contrast. This was also a good time for me to catch that inner lip of the stones. I didn't really want to push this all the way to the border of the grass and left the black primer as an ambiguous transition. These stones just need a highlight of Dungeon Gray, and Big Floof is just perfect for this. It's going to catch all of the sharp edges and let the highlight creep in just a bit towards the center. Just be sure to keep your strokes nice and sweepy and in general consistent with each other. This will keep the shades nice and dark and the highlight pattern uniform. The sides having a bit rougher of a texture can handle a bit more of an aggressive scrubbing. So feel free to change up your stroke angle and get a more interesting look. Now for Guardian Green. Here I'm doing something a bit unorthodox, using a medium dry brush in sort of an orbital sander stroke. By placing the flat head of Big Floof on the surface, then twisting and sweeping the grass in one continuous stroke. This paid off big time by getting me an even highlight over the texture while retaining my dark edge and preventing any overspill. Work smarter, not harder. With that, the base is done and looking good. Now time to tackle some of those props, starting with the beer cans. And they are the classic Duff brand from the show, so we gotta treat them right. First, I need a bit of gunmetal. This is going to be a quick dry brush to lay down a scratchy metallic surface. This should be focused on the top and bottom, as the label is going to take care of the rest. Next, a color we're going to see a lot in this project, desert yellow. This base coat is really used to neutralize the dark black prime. This will make it a whole lot easier to get full coverage with the orange I plan to use later. Just be sure to get clean lines at the top and bottom where the label meets the raw aluminum. Now for some sunrise orange. Now, when it comes to the color of the can, over the years on the show, it's shifted between oranges and reds, so there's plenty of room to pick your shade. For me, I went with the old school Day-Glo orange can. Even with the desaturated yellow underneath, it took a few applications to get the intensity I liked. Just be sure to avoid that thin triangle at the top. The desert yellow is a perfect fit for this detail. Next, the white label got a base coat of ash gray. Now, I know this doesn't look too bright in the bottle, but I wanted a toned down white for this label. This is because I plan on having Homer's shirt be the brightest object on the model. Then, it was just a matter of adding a dot of pure red and a very careful black lining of the embossed letters. This will take time. I locked in and powered through in about 20-25 minutes. Tedious, but doable. Finally, to give the cans a last bit of pomp, I dry brushed a bit of mithril, just a dusting, and they were donezo. Moving over to the repair grill, I want to keep it simple, so I'm turning to hardened carapace to get me going. This brownish gray reminds me of the usual smoke encrusted surfaces of a well-used grill, so there's no reason not to make it the star here. And here's a good example of why you should prime your parts based on how you're going to paint them. If I primed this in black, it probably would have only took 1, maybe 2 coats rather than the 5 I had to use. But let's just say I maybe did this on purpose so you could just see what would happen. Once based, I gave it an all-over light dry brush of gunmetal. This will give me thousands of tiny metallic scratches while catching the edges with a glint of metal. If you haven't yet, give throwing a metallic dry brush over a non-metallic. You might be surprised how often it comes in handy. And for its second appearance, Desert Yellow handled the handles. A simple light coat will do just fine. Finally, a few dots of mithril on all the rivets move the grill into the done box. Before we dive into Homer himself, I'd like to take a moment to thank my subscribers over on Patreon. Each month, your continued support continues to astound. I can't thank you enough. And a special shout out to Romeo G. For quite a while, he was stalking the halls of greatness, and he recently took the step to carve his name into the painting pantheon. Thank you so much. If you would like to join these hollowed halls, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description below. For now, let's get back to work. Let's start working our way up Homer with his shoes, and simple and clean will be the plan. So all I want is a super clean and smooth 100% opaque coat. Pin down the paint and put in the effort to ensure a flawless finish. Even when using an overbrush technique like this, you'll need extra focus to not leave a texture on this surface. Following this is Homie's signature blue pants. Well, white for now. Nothing a bit of dark gray can't blue up. Again, 100% opaque, even coverage. The only snags here will be making sure you get the insides of the legs as cleanly as the outside. The key here is to rotate the part as much as possible. You'll be surprised how much a new perspective can help. After that base, ultramarine was used to slowly highlight and buff the pants up a few shades. If you use a light dry brush here over a smooth surface, you'll get a ton of control on when to stop, as these smooth surfaces build color at a snail's pace. Just be sure to rotate and highlight the sides and back as well. And you really don't need a heavy highlight here, as Homer's rotundness is providing his legs plenty of shade. Now, with this shirt, you would think I would just call it done. And if it was for me, sure. But this is for a client, so extra steps must be had. Besides, pure white should be avoided. So I used ash gray to lay down a base. And truth be told, it's not that much darker. But this will serve as my shadow tone. Because I'm going for that super clean look, having a shadow color that's so close to the highlight is going to make it a lot easier to get that smooth transition I'm looking for. And for that highlight, spaceship exterior. Now, even though I'm dry brushing this highlight, it's still important to thin down your paint with a touch of water or medium. These lighter paints like to get clumpy, so a touch more liquid can help keep things loosey-goosey. And yeah, I know the first pass looks a little rough. It's the first pass. I'm gonna need to stack multiple passes of this thinned down paint. After about 5 or 6, it'll start to form up like Voltron, and you'll be left with a good looking white shirt. But remember to give plenty of drying time between coats. If you don't, you might get one of these. Yeah, I know. It's gross. This happens when you brush over an area that's only semi-dry, but it's not the end of the world. The first step is to go back over the area and clear off as much of the edge of the torn layer. I want to remove all of it and clean my brush of any of the paint chunks. Then set it down for at least 10 minutes to fully dry. Then take a look. If it's smooth, great, you saved it. But if you still see a little something, you can opt to add a stippling layer to the highlight to help blend in the spot. Persistence is the key. And to bring back a familiar color, I used Monster Brown on his belt, and just a touch of light tone around the buckle. I kept this very reserved to maintain that cartoon aesthetic, but the most important thing is to paint clean here. Repaints on white are a pain. You don't want to do it. For the hardware, I just kept it simple with weapon bronze. With that, the shirt was complete. For his cape apron, I wanted to go with a classic chaotic red is a good place to start. Chaotic red is a good place to start. Chaotic red is a good place to start. I needed to base everywhere, but truth be told, I wasn't too concerned with the underside. While yes, I'm getting color there and painting it completely, a majority of my focus is going to be on the upper side, and so should yours. That's the side people are going to see. Then it was time for Dragon Red to highlight. Just like with the white, I buffed this on with Big Floof, but unsurprisingly, this red has better coverage than the white, so I ended up pumping the brakes after about 2 passes. Didn't want to completely cover the chaotic below. Finally, pure red for the final highlight. Since this apron is high up on the model, it justifies adding a second layer to the highlight here. And just like with the pants, I'm not going to be afraid of a slightly scuffy highlight here. So long as I keep the strokes consistent, the scratches will blend to a nice semi-random fabric texture. Now for the main attraction, all of that skin, which of course is my and many other painters' nemesis, yellow. Nemesis? 5 cool points if you get that reference. So let's start with a friendly yellow with desert again. This will be the perfect scaffolding to build the face. It almost sits perfectly right between the skin tone and the beard tone. So feel free to get this all over and fully opaque if you please. Just keep it smooth. Now, while I personally like this shade of yellow, it's not quite the iconic Simpsons yellow. For that, I'm using this non-metallic metal gold highlight. Just like with the shirt, the key here will be thinning down this yellow paint to ensure smooth application, and waiting plenty of time between coats to let each one dry. Then, just trusting the process. Don't let those rough looking first layers scare you off from pushing through. You got this. Just keep adding one thin layer after layer. The additive properties of acrylic paints and the law of averages should blend out the layers into a smoothly highlighted shade. Take extra time around the face though. You don't want to rush this part. If you keep the layers thin, you can selectively preserve very subtle contourings of the face. Just be sure to really push that yellow to full saturation on the brows and bald head to really emphasize the lighting. Now for the beard, I started with an oopsie. I went with dirt splatter, and I made the age-old mistake of judging a paint by its bottle. This ended up drying way too dark and looking less like Homer and more like Fred Flintstone. So once again, Monster Brown swooped in to save the day. And as a fun bonus, I tried to preserve the thin outline of the dirt splatter as a pseudo black lining. Always take an opportunity to turn an oopsie daisy into a yippee-ki-yay. Now, let's do those eyes. First, by laying down a solid base of ash. Then, a top coat of spaceship exterior for that bright white look. After dotting the eyes, you can follow it up with some high-stress detail painting by filling in Homer's hair. Just be sure to use a tripod brace to really steady your hands for this, because just like the white, you do not want to have to do touch-ups on the yellow. Now, to quickly run through his utensils. First, a quick black metal dry brush. Followed by a dry brush of gunmetal. If you keep the strokes going towards the center, you get this nice bright metallic edge. Just be sure to do this on both sides. Then, dirt splatter redeemed itself by basting all the wooden handles. Followed by a quick feathering of monster browns. I top things off with a few mithril buttons on the rivets for the final touch. And of course, the sausage needs attention. And since I want a classic hot link look, I layered on a few coats of dragon red. Try to only get light coverage in the grill grooves, this way you'll have a built-in shadow. And to really sell this look, you really want to push the color to full saturation at the ends of the link. Finally, I need to go to my spray booth and crank out the airbrush to do some soft flame work. Starting with our yellow highlight color, I loaded up and pushed this as deep as it would go. While yes, there will be some deep areas that'll only get a light misting, fires are brighter at the core, so a tiny bit of white showing will be fine. Once I got solid yellow across the flames, I mixed up sunrise orange. Here, I need to restrict my spray angles from getting too deep into the fire. The goal really is to push this color more to the tips of the flames and only letting it creep down about halfway to the base. Be sure to rotate the fire as often as you can to keep this effect even on all sides. Finally, Dragon Red was the last addition to the brush. Even more restraint must be used here. At first, I only wanted to kiss the tips of each flame. Then, once I got comfortable with the brush, I slowly pulled it down to the belly of the fire just to add a bit of personality here and there. It only really takes a few minutes to get great results with an airbrush. It sort of feels like cheating, but either way, the painting was over and I just needed to varnish and glue them up. So I called him done. And ay caramba, Grill King Homer came out great. And I gotta say, I was really impressed with its overall size. For a Simpson sculpt, you really can't find anything in this quality at this scale. And what's extra awesome is that you can try out this project for yourself for free and pick up this STL by using the link below. Hopefully, you'll enjoy painting it as much as I did. But I know my client is waiting for this one, so I need to get it boxed up and shipped out. So until my next video, thank you for watching, stay creative, and always enjoy the process.